The lights of America's Got Talent 2025 glittered brighter than ever. The crowd was loud, the stage looked magical, and Simon Cowell sat in his chair, arms crossed, waiting for the next contestant. It had been a night of surprises already, funny acts, dancers, and singers from around the world, but no one knew that the most heart-stirring moment of the entire season was about to walk onto that stage. As the music faded, the host stepped forward. Next up, we have a young girl who's traveled a very long way to be here tonight. Please welcome, Angelica Cruz from the Philippines. The audience clapped politely. From backstage came a tiny figure, a sweet-looking 13-year-old girl wearing a simple white dress. Her long black hair framed her face, and her hands trembled as she held the microphone. She wasn't dressed like the other contestants. There was no glitter, no flashy outfit. Just a shy smile, and a sparkle in her eyes that hinted at something deeper. Simon raised an eyebrow. "Hello, sweetheart," he said in his calm British tone. "What's your name?" "My name is Angelica Cruz," she answered softly, her accent gentle and melodic. "And where are you from?" "I'm from Cebu, Philippines," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The audience cheered when they heard it. Some waved little flags, and a few Filipinos in the crowd shouted, "Mabuhay." From the back rows, Angelica smiled nervously, clutching the microphone. Simon leaned forward. "Angelica, what are you going to do for us today?" "I'm going to sing a song. It's called, You Raise Me Up." Simon nodded. "That's a very big song, young lady. Are you sure you're ready for that?" She nodded again, this time more firmly. "Yes, sir. I'm ready." The room went silent. The music began. Soft piano keys filled the theater. Angelica closed her eyes. For a moment, she seemed to forget the audience, the judges, everything. Her lips parted, and her voice emerged, pure, delicate, and full of emotion. When she sang the first line, "When I am down, and oh my soul, so weary," a hush fell across the room. The tone of her voice carried something that words could not describe. It was fragile yet powerful, like a small candle burning against the dark. Simon's eyebrows lifted slightly. Heidi Klum's mouth opened in surprise. The camera panned across the audience, people were already tearing up. Angelica's story wasn't known to them yet, but her voice carried it. Every note told the truth of a little girl who had faced storms far beyond her years. Back home in Cebu, life for Angelica had never been easy. She was raised by her grandmother, who sold fruits by the roadside. Her father had passed away when she was 6, and her mother worked overseas as a caregiver. Most nights, Angelica sang to her grandmother under the dim light of a kerosene lamp, her voice echoing through the small bamboo house. Music was her escape. When typhoons came and their roof leaked, she'd sing. When her grandmother got sick and they couldn't afford medicine, she'd hum songs of hope. She didn't sing to become famous, she sang to survive. One night, when she was 9, she saw America's Got Talent on an old TV in a neighbor's house. Simon Cowell was there, just like always. Angelica had whispered to herself, "One day, I'll sing for him." Everyone laughed at her dream. How could a poor girl from a small island ever make it to the world's biggest stage? But her grandmother had told her, "Dreams are free, my child. So dream the biggest ones." Angelica never stopped dreaming. She started singing in small church events, school competitions, and on the streets during Christmas season to earn coins for her grandmother's medicine. A kind teacher filmed her one day and uploaded her performance online. Within days, it went viral. Millions of people watched, and the AGT producers noticed. A few months later, she received an email, an invitation to audition in Los Angeles. That moment changed everything. Now, standing under the glowing AGT lights, she sang as if her entire life depended on it. Her voice rose higher, reaching the powerful chorus. The words, "You raise me up, so I can stand on mountains," filled the entire theater like a wave of light. Simon leaned back in his chair, speechless. Howie Mandel whispered, "She's something special." Sofia Vergara wiped a tear from her eye. The audience stood up before she even finished. By the time she hit the final note, everyone was clapping, cheering, crying. The music faded, and she stood there, trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. Simon Cowell didn't speak right away. He just stared at her with that thoughtful, quiet look, the one that usually came before something big. The crowd waited in anticipation. Finally, Simon said softly, "Angelica, do you know what just happened?" She shook her head, still crying. You just gave one of the most emotional performances I have ever heard on this stage. The audience erupted again. Angelica covered her mouth in disbelief. Simon continued, you know, sometimes, we hear singers who have big voices. But you have something more. You sing from your heart, from your pain, from your story. And that's what makes you unforgettable. He paused. You remind me why we do this show. Then Simon stood up. The crowd screamed. They knew what was coming. Simon reached out his hand and slammed the golden buzzer. The confetti burst into the air. Gold rained down around Angelica as she fell to her knees, crying and laughing at the same time. The other judges stood up, clapping and cheering. Her grandmother, who had come all the way from the Philippines, rushed onto the stage. She hugged Angelica tightly as the confetti fell over them. Simon walked up on stage, something he rarely did. He smiled at her grandmother and said, you raised an incredible little girl. The old woman, through her tears, whispered, thank you for seeing her heart. Backstage, the host caught up with them. How do you feel, Angelica? Angelica wiped her eyes and said, I just wanted to make my Lola proud. I wanted the world to hear my song. The clip went viral that same night. Within hours, millions had watched her performance online. People around the world were moved by the story of the sweet Filipino girl who turned her pain into beauty. News channels called her the angel of AGT. Celebrities shared her video with captions like, pure talent, and voice from heaven. Back home in Cebu, her entire village gathered around small TVs and phones, crying and cheering when the confetti fell. Her grandmother sat by the window, whispering prayers of thanks. In the following weeks, Angelica became one of the most talked about contestants in AGT history. The golden buzzer sent her straight to the live shows, and she knew she had to work even harder. Simon personally mentored her, helping her choose songs that would show her range in her soul. During rehearsals, she would sometimes doubt herself. The other contestants were older, stronger, and more experienced. But Simon always told her, never compare yourself. Just be you. She would smile and answer, yes, sir. When the live shows arrived, Angelica walked onto the stage once again, this time more confident, more radiant. She sang, Fight Song, by Rachel Platten, dedicating it to her mother who watched from afar. The performance left everyone stunned again. Simon smiled proudly. The world was falling in love with her all over again. Social media exploded. She's the next superstar. One fan wrote, her voice heals hearts, said. Another. Each week, she continued to surprise the judges. She sang Whitney Houston, Adele, and even an original song she wrote about her grandmother called, Light in the Dark. Every time, the audience rose to their feet. Every time, Simon looked at her with admiration. But behind the lights and cheers, Angelica still carried the memories of her humble life. She called her grandmother every night after rehearsals. Lola, I'm doing okay. I miss home, she'd say. Her grandmother would answer, home is wherever you sing, Anik. As the finals approached, Angelica chose her most emotional song yet. It was, Never Enough, from The Greatest Showman. She wanted to prove that even a simple girl from the Philippines could stand among the world's best. When she walked onto the stage that night, the world watched. Her dress shimmered under the lights. The orchestra began, and as she hit the first note, the room was silent once again. Her voice soared through the theater, filled with passion, power, and pain. Simon's face softened. Halfway through the song, people in the crowd began to cry. By the end, she received the loudest standing ovation of the season. When the judges spoke, Heidi said, you are magic. Sophia said, you are already a star. Howie added, you don't just sing songs, you live them. Simon said nothing for a moment. He just stood and clapped. Angelica, he said finally, I think you might just win this whole thing. The audience roared. When the final votes were counted a week later, Angelica didn't win first place, but she didn't need to. She had already won the world's heart. Simon invited her to perform on stage again for the finale, saying, this show was made for voices like yours. After the season ended, Angelica's life completely changed. She signed a record deal, appeared on talk shows, and performed across America. But she never forgot where she came from. In her first big concert, she sang, You Raise Me Up, again and told the crowd, this song is for everyone who ever felt small, poor, or invisible. Don't stop dreaming. I'm proof that even from the smallest island, your voice can reach the world. The crowd rose in applause, some crying, some smiling. Months later, Simon was interviewed about that season. The host asked, What was the most unforgettable moment of AGT 2025 for you? Simon smiled. A little girl from the Philippines, he said. Angelica Cruz. She reminded me that true talent doesn't need fame, money, or big words. It just needs heart. He paused, then added, that's why I hit that golden buzzer. I didn't do it because she was perfect, I did it because she was real. Angelica returned to the Philippines as a hero. She used her earnings to build a small music school for poor children in Cebu, calling it the Dream Center. When people asked her why, she said, because someone gave me a chance. Now it's my turn. Her grandmother lived to see the opening. On that day, Angelica sang again, her voice echoing through the same streets where she once sang for coins. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Thank you, Lola, for raising me up." Back in America, AGT released a special video titled, "The Girl Who Made Simon Cry." It became one of the most viewed videos in the show's history. Years later, when people talk about AGT legends, they mention her name alongside Susan Boyle, Cody Lee, and other greats. But for those who watched her that night in 2025, it wasn't just about her voice. It was about hope. She proved that even the smallest dream, born in the poorest corner of the world, can light up the biggest stage. And every time Simon Cowell sees a young contestant walk nervously onto that stage, he remembers the sweet Filipino girl who taught him that true greatness often comes wrapped in humility. In interviews, Angelica often says, winning doesn't matter. What matters is singing from your soul. When you do that, you already win. She continues to perform around the world, using her voice to raise awareness for children in poverty. She says her goal is simple, to make people feel less alone. One evening, years after her golden buzzer, she performed at a charity concert in New York. Among the audience was Simon Cowell himself. She spotted him from the stage and smiled. When she finished her last song, she walked down and handed him a single gold flower. He stood up and hugged her, a rare gesture from the toughest judge in television. Later, Simon said to the press, "She reminds me that kindness and talent together can change the world." And that's exactly what Angelica did. She changed the world, not with fame or wealth, but with a voice that carried love, loss, and hope across oceans. To this day, people still replay her golden buzzer moment online. Each time, someone new discovers her story and finds inspiration to keep going, to keep believing. Because Angelica Cruz, the sweet Filipino girl who once sang under the stars of Cebu, proved that when your voice comes from your heart, even Simon Cowell can't help but hit the golden buzzer. And somewhere, under a small roof in the Philippines, her grandmother's words still echo, "Dream the biggest ones, Anak." Because dreams are free.